In one quiet phase shift, the money map began to redraw itself, and most people didn't feel a thing. No press conference, no countdown clock, no global fanfare, just a quiet confirmation in the background systems that move value across borders while the public keeps scrolling. They said a unified BRICS currency was a fantasy. They said the politics were too messy, the tech too early, the coordination impossible. And yet here we are, with the rails hardening under our feet while the narrative still tells you it's years away. What's happening right now is not a headline you'll catch on the nightly news. It's a systems upgrade, the kind that changes behavior before anyone agrees to change their beliefs. Here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. When new rails are finished, money follows the path of least resistance. And once those rails are built to settle value faster, cheaper, and beyond the orbit of a single reserve currency, the old map stops being the map. Hold that thought, because the moment you see the mechanism, the timeline snaps into focus, and it's a lot shorter than you've been told. So what actually moved? Not the brand new one coin to rule them all rumor people love arguing about. The quiet leap is the plumbing underneath, a cross-border settlement network that lets BRICS members move value directly, test live transactions in parallel with legacy systems, and do it with central bank visibility from the first packet to final settlement. Call it a final testing phase, call it a minimum viable network, call it what you want. But the behavior tells you the truth. Pilots have become production-grade sandboxes. Test corridors now carry real flow, and national systems that once lived only on whiteboards are clearing real transactions between real institutions. That's the pivot, because you don't need an official BRICS coin to change global finance. You need a working spine that lets national currencies, tokenized claims, and future CBDCs interoperate at speed, a spine that can be scaled, cloned, and regionalized. If you've ever watched a software rollout in a big company, you know the pattern. There's no single launch day with balloons and confetti. There's a control cutover, a period where the old and new stacks run in parallel, load slowly migrates, and the switch flips only when everyone realizes they've already been using the new one for months. That's what we're in, a control cutover for cross-border money. And here's why the timing is sooner than anyone expected. First, BRICS members have already normalized local currency settlement and trade. Second, national digital currency pilots keep expanding, creating a bigger pool of systems ready to connect. Third, the cross-border hub linking those systems has moved from paper to code to live corridors. And once live corridors exist, scale becomes an engineering decision, not a diplomatic debate. Think about the incentive landscape for a second. If you can settle oil in local currencies with finality within seconds, you cut your FX exposure. If you can move trade flows without long-haul correspondent chains, you cut fees and time. If the settlement fabric is programmable, you can embed conditions, audits, and risk controls directly into the payment itself. That combination is a gravity well. You'll hear people say there's no date on the calendar, as if that means nothing is happening. The rollout has already started. Behind the scenes, regional banks are training on new interfaces. Compliance teams are learning how to read event logs from programmable transactions instead of static statements. Treasurers are modeling liquidity on faster settlement cycles and realizing they need fewer buffers parked in the wrong places. Is this a single coin that replaces national currencies? No, that's the wrong question. This is a network that lets national currencies travel on the same high-speed rails and be settled with central bank clarity. It's an overlay for the world as it is, not a fantasy world where politics disappear. But because this is finance, politics will sprint to catch up. Expect press briefings that pretend this is just an experiment. Expect think pieces about risk from people who never shipped a payment system. Expect late adopters to claim it won't scale right before it does. If you want to tell for when a money system is real, look for the boring stuff. Disaster recovery drills, throughput benchmarks, interoperability tests with legacy formats, migration playbooks for treasury teams. Those are the signs you're in the final testing cycle. Not the hype, checklists. And yes, there are limits to be ironed out. Messaging standards need tight mapping so nothing gets lost in translation. Sanction screens have to work at machine speed. FX liquidity has to be reachable without adding the very choke points this system is meant to bypass. But the hardest work, making separate central bank systems speak to each other, is already far enough along to carry live traffic in more than one corridor. One more anchor, messaging formats are converging whether people notice or not. As banks finalize their shift into richer data standards, cross-network translation gets easier, not harder. That's the unsung accelerant for any non-SWIFT corridor that wants to go from pilot to permanent. There's a reason the language coming out of the working groups sounds boring. It's supposed to. Minimum viable platform, participant onboarding, operational readiness. Those phrases are camouflage for a simple truth. The pipes are being pressure tested for prime time. Once the error budgets hold at scale, the switch doesn't flip with a speech. It flips because no one wants to go back to slower, more expensive rails. Here's what that means for the clock. This doesn't wait for a treaty. It moves as fast as the participants are willing to plug in. One corridor goes live, then two, then a regional mesh, then a path that looks suspiciously like a new default for the parts of the world that trade with each other more than they trade with Washington. If you think this only matters for geopolitics, look closer at the commercial layer. When settlement compresses from days to near instant finality, working capital is freed up. When margins expand by a few basis points at scale, procurement moves markets. When exporters can invoice in their own currency and get paid with finality across borders, those invoices multiply. Now follow the second-order effects. A bank that clears more trade flows on the new rails becomes the bank that gets the next mandate. A port that settles faster becomes the port that attracts the next ship. A country that plugs in early becomes the place multinational cash desks park liquidity because they can move it at will. This is how adoption looks from the inside. No slogans, no fireworks, just a slow click of defaults changing underneath everything else people are arguing about. So is there a date? You won't get one here. You'll get a timeline that's shorter than the headlines imply. Final testing is not a press tour. It's a rehearsal for production, and rehearsals end when the cast realizes they're already performing. You will hear arguments that the system can't possibly scale, that compliance will kill it, that politics will block it. They said the same about every major payments upgrade over the last 50 years. Then the upgrade quietly became the way everyone did business. Here's your real signal. When import invoices and export receipts start landing with settlement confirmations from the new rails, when freight forwarders stop asking whether you can use a network and start asking why you aren't, the question won't be if this is coming. It'll be whether you're already late. If you're still here, you're ahead of the noise. Keep your focus on systems, not slogans. Watch the corridors, the interfaces, the checklists. The rest will follow. Subscribe to Wealth Signal to stay in front of these shifts and never be the last to know.